Welcome to part 4 of this beginner tutorial series on making a low poly asset library. So we're going to start with texturing the rock using an image texture as a brush, and then we're going to texture the picture frame as well. As you can see, I have sort of separated the objects we made in the third part of this tutorial into two groups. The group on the right here we are not going to use for this tutorial. We'll use these 4 objects here on the left to demonstrate a couple different techniques for texturing, and then you can use whichever techniques you like the best to texture the other objects. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and hide those by going over to the Scene Collection panel over here in the top right, and we're just going to click the little eye next to the ones we want to turn off. We want to turn off that, the shelf. And then for the table, we need to actually expand that and then turn off each of the constituent pieces as well. I'm going to get that top shelf there. All right, so then we'll click on the rock, center up on it by hitting the number pad period. All right, so we're going to start with this rock here. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to have to do this for all of the objects. We want to apply their scale. And then we're going to have to do a few other little things to get things set up in order to get us ready to put textures on this. So with the rock selected, hit Control A, and then you're going to go to Scale, and that's going to apply the scale so that now the scale it is now, it's considered to be sort of its default normal scale. All right, so next we're going to go over to the Materials tab, add a new material, and we'll just call that Rock. And then we're going to go into the Shading tab up at the top. And that brings us over to here. And what we want to do is down in the Node Editor, down here, we're going to add in a new node. And this will allow us to hold our texture file. So the difference between a texture and a material is a texture is like a picture that we are projecting onto our mesh. The material is a way to handle things like reflections. Does it have sort of translucency to it? Is it transparent? Is it opaque? How does light behave when it hits it? Whereas the texture is actually just like an image file that either could be drawn, it could be from an actual real photograph. There's plenty of different ways that you can do textures. You can also do what are called procedural textures, where you generate something using basically mathematics in the computer to generate an interesting pattern that you'll use as a basis of your texture for your object. And we're going to go over all of that with these different objects here. So for this one, we want to go to the Add, and then go down to Texture. And we're going to go over to Image Texture. So that gives you this little image texture node. And you're going to drop that somewhere here to the left of this principled BSDF shader. This is what controls the light and how the light reacts with the object. And then this is what's going to hold our image texture. So we want to plug the color from the image texture into the base color. Now we have no texture selected, so it's just black. So what we want to do is go to New. And we're going to change this to Rock. And I like to do _TEX, just to remind myself that it's a texture. For our purposes, it is just fine to leave it at 1024 by 1024. So depending on what you're doing, whether it's going to be like photoreal or a cartoon, this could be much higher, this could be much lower. For what we're doing today, the defaults are going to be just fine. So just rename that Rock Text, hit OK. And so now that's created a new texture. Image texture file here, but that has not saved the image. We're going to have to do that real quick before we do anything else. So we're going to want to go over to the UV Editing Workspace, and that's going to bring up this. And so scroll out a little bit to zoom out here. You'll see the rock text up here. And so we just want to go to Image and go down to Save. You can also hit Alt-S on the keyboard, that will save your image. And then we just want to save the rock texture PNG. And we're just going to save that right there in that same directory. so that it can stay with it. And then we see over here that we have a 3D view with our mesh, and then here we can see the mesh is sort of unwrapped and projected onto this flat texture here. So we actually want to take advantage of as much of this image as possible, so we want to re-unwrap it. So with everything selected, we're going to go to UV, and we want to choose Smart UV Project. And then that's going to bring up this set of options. And you can leave the angle the same, but we want to just bump up the island margin to about 2, and then the area weight to 1. This is going to make sure that you don't have overlaps, and it's going to sort of determine how well it unwraps. And I find that that combination does well for something like this. So as you can see now, we're taking advantage of much more of this space here. And now we'll just go up in File and save the project real quick. But now we are set up to be able to paint a texture on this rock. So we're going to go over to Texture Paint, and now we're in the texture painting interface. So over on the far right here, you have the texture slots. This is a little like wrench and screwdriver icon, which is the active tool properties. And so if you ever need to go back to here, that's where that's going to be. You also might need to go down here to the texture properties in order to set some stuff up here. We'll use that as well, but this first sort of default is this icon here. As you can see, we have the one rock texture in here, and for now you can just leave this stuff on the defaults, and we're going to go down to this texture properties here, and you see that brush is selected, and so we're going to create a new brush, and we're going to use an image as a brush to paint a texture on this rock. So to do that, we need to get an image of a rock. From here, you're going to go down and find yourself a real nice rock. So look at there, rock. And then let's see, we just want to find any kind of rock. It really doesn't matter. The thing we don't want is a rock like this where it's like that. We want the rock texture to take up the whole entire image. So these first couple ones are probably the best. So look at the cliffs, and this is going to work great for us. So let's do something like this. This one says seamless. That's going to be good in this situation. For brushes, a lot of times the seamless ones are very good, because then you can tile them in such a way that they always match up. So if you don't have an account with textures.com, go ahead and set that up. It is a free account, and you get 15 free credits, I believe, every day to download stuff. So they have tons and tons of stuff, but you don't want to just try to download everything. This is a site that you go to when you need to just grab a texture or two for the project you're working on. But it's great. I love it. So we're just going to grab this one here, this cliffs 0174, just the first seamless image there, and save that wherever you want to save your files. Okay, so once that's downloaded, go back into Blender. And now you're going to go to Open on that texture brush thing, and you're going to go find that file that you just downloaded. I downloaded a few rock textures recently, so this is the one we want here. Okay, and so now that we got that loaded in, you can actually go back to the tool properties, and this is where you can set how this tool is going to behave. If you want to change the color of the tool, if you want to change the blending mode. For now, we're just going to leave that as is. But now you can just click on the rock and hold the mouse button down, drag around, and you're going to paint that texture on there. So that might be, you know, a little bit small, though it actually looks pretty good. So as you can see, the reflections aren't great, so we'll want to adjust the material a little bit to give it some more roughness, probably. But all in all, just putting this seamless texture onto this brush has made it very easy for us to just paint a rock. Look at that. So now we've got a real basic rock. So you'll notice that there'll be some places where the paint sort of seems to get smeared out, and that's a lot of times just due to the angle that the paint was applied. So it's being sort of projected from the camera, and from the amount that you have zoomed in adjusts the sort of size of the brush as well, or how much it affects. But you can adjust the radius, see how big your brush is up here, so you get a real big brush, and so that might be more to your liking. Like, I'm really liking the sort of the level of detail with it scaled up like that. That looks pretty cool, I think. So I think I'm going to go with that. And then I'm just going to reset it down for later. You can also do the strength if you want to sort of blend a variety of different texture brushes on top of each other to layer things up and build things up by adjusting the strength. You can have it apply more or less of the image to the object with each click. But you can also adjust that stuff over here. So you can do that either in the side panel or in this top bar up at the top. But that's the basics on how you do a texture painting brush with just an image file. So one thing to note is that you want to make sure that you save your image frequently, just because it doesn't save automatically if you just save the file, and we have not saved this image. So we want to go back up here and make sure to save the image, because there have been a couple times, of course, that I've left the program, come back in later, and realized I didn't save the texture that I had painted and had to do it all over again. So that's how you paint a rock. Now let's go back to our layout, and we're going to move on to another object. So let's move this guy out of the way, center up on the picture frame, and we're going to, on this, we're going to do a combination of two different textures on the same object, and put a picture in the frame. So first we want to apply the scale, so Control A, select scale, and then we want to add a material to the object. This is just the same. We're going to just call this frame. And this is just, the same process that you're going to go through for all of these objects when you're setting up to set up textures. So go into the shading options, and again we're in the node editor, and then we're going to go add texture, image texture, and drop this in there. Plug the color into the base color. Yeah, so this time we want a texture that looks like a wood grain on the frame. So let's grab a wood grain texture from goodoldtextures.com. All right, so where's some wood grain? Wood. And let's go fine wood. Oh, I think that's going to work for us. So this first one right here looks perfect to me. It's got a long sort of amount, and we can get a bunch of different sort of slices out of this for our picture frame. That is great. So let's just grab that, save it, back into Blender, open, and go find that texture you just downloaded. All right, that's the one we want. Open that up. You can see on mine, it went ahead and just projected it on the whole thing. That's not exactly what we want. It does it for you. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix that. If it doesn't do that for you, don't worry about that. We're still going to fix that. So for now, we're going to go over to our UV editing mode, and we want to select all the faces except for the one in the center. So the easiest way to do that is to just select the center face, go over to select, and then you should have the option, yep, invert, and that selects everything else. So go up to the UV, and we're going to choose cube projection. All right, and so what that's going to do is that's going to just assume this is a cube, and as you can see, it unwrapped it in such a way that we can see the that it looks pretty good. So if we go the top here and scroll your mouse across this menu bar, it'll scroll, and then we're going to go to the viewport shading that gives you the material preview, just so we can see how this stuff is lined up. And we can see that on the sides, the grain runs the length of it, but on the bottom and the top, it's sort of the grain runs across, and we'd rather have it run the length, I think. So let's grab those individual faces there, and we'll grab, the ones inside are probably fine, and the ones on the top and bottom look fine. So it just seems to be the ones on the front there. So we're going to take those, and then hover your mouse over the image viewport here on the left, hit A to select all the vertices, use the rotate option, and then click on the circle that comes up to rotate around, and just hit Control on your keyboard to snap to 5-degree increments and rotate that 90 degrees, and then click away, box select one of them, move tool, and you can just move it along and find a piece of grain that you like. And then do the same for the other one, box select, oops, box select, and move, and just find some grain that looks good for that part. Okay, so now we've got the picture frame with wood grain on it. We're not going to see the back. The back's going to be up against the wall anytime we're using it probably, so we can just leave that the way it is. But we have wood grain in the middle, and we'd like a picture there. So let's go to our Materials tab over here. Add another material, select just that middle face, select the new material, make a new material. We're going to call this picture, and then hit assign, and now go into the shading, and as you can see, we have a new material here with a new shader. Add in another texture, image texture, color into the base color, and this time we're going to hit open, and I already have downloaded a copy of the Mona Lisa. You can grab whatever you want as far as your image goes. Just go onto the internet and do a search for, Mona Lisa free, or any sort of famous artwork, free image. There's usually something out there that is a completely free version of that famous painting. So as you can see, it's not showing up correctly, so we have to go into the UV editing tab, and that face is it's just too small. So we should be able to just go up here, scroll on this menu bar to find the UV section, go unwrap, and well, it's not perfect. Hit 7. And so what we want to do is we want to just recrop this so that it shows the Mona Lisa a little bit better. As you can see, the dimensions of our picture frame aren't quite right for the dimensions of our actual image. So to fix that, we're just going to hit A to select all. And we're going to do a little scaling and just eyeball it to get the dimensions about the same. All right, that's a little bit better. So just for the center face where we're on the Mona Lisa, we're going to unwrap that again. So UV, and then just hit unwrap. And now we're going to select all the vertices over here, hit R to rotate, and we're just going to rotate around to get our size. G to grab, and you hit Y to constrain on the Y axis. On the 2D plane, the Y is the vertical axis. S to size, and we can size that up. So the Mona Lisa is in our picture frame. And so there we go. Now we've got a wood-grained picture frame. So that's a way to use two different images, image files on the same object using two different materials. So that brings us to the end of part 4. In part 5, we're going to dive into procedural textures on the sword. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I have other tutorials in the works. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on them. And if you really like this tutorial, in the description there is a link to my Patreon. So head on over there, and my supporters get exclusive asset packs and other cool stuff I have made over the years for animation, VFX, video production, Dungeons and Dragons, all sorts of stuff. Alrighty, thanks for watching. Cheers.